we start businesses according to the level of our education. I push myself out there to then say, let me expose myself to more. Have a competitive advantage, because when you don't have a competitive advantage, you've got no economic right to be in the marketplace. You're going to get thrashed because the marketplace is unforgiving.
Hi, Genies. Welcome to yet another episode of Access Genie. I'm your host, Ancillar Nombewu. We're coming to you live from the spectacular secluded getaway right in the heart of Northcliffe. It is called the Cliffside Boutique Getaway. You can come here for business and pleasure. Today, we're bringing you an incredible conversation around the township economy with none other than the township plug himself, Mr. Bulelani Balabala. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on your platform.
I am so excited to have you because I watch your content on social media. I've seen a number of your interviews on like a mass media platforms. And I learned that your business journey actually started when you were young, when you were about 16, 17, when you were a teenager. You had a printing business and you went to your high school and you got them their matric jackets done and you got your first buck, right? You made about 500 Rand in profit though at the time. And then you were able to scale that up and build an internet cafe. The interesting part, which was rather shocking for me, was how that internet cafe, first day made 5 Rand, next day made 3 Rand, and for 7 years, on average a month, you'll make about 180 to 380 Rand. Yet you kept that business going for 7 years. Why did you keep on working on that business, even though the profits were not as high as you'd have liked them to be?
I think for me, what when you've told yourself that this is my only plan, this is my only solution to provide, because the biggest goal then was to be able to help my mother, right? Provide food, and some basic means like electricity and the sort. So I was really driven by delivering, showing up each and every day, um, learning the business, because also when I started, I didn't have any knowledge on in and around how to utilize computers, scanning, faxing, and the sort. So I was really just learning as I was moving along. But each and every day, I sort of tell myself that, I'm going to make this thing work. So while I'm running this internet cafe, I'm also doing odd things on the side. So if you come to me and you say, we need rubble removed, I'm going to remove the rubble, or selling stationery packs at the beginning of the year. So you're trying out all these different things, but also, at the seventh year, June of the seventh year, I had told myself, that June is my last month, because I'd given it all I had. I've learned different things. I've tried different things. It's not working out. But the strangest thing happened literally a week after. Things started to change. I can't explain it, right? People started to show up. We started making actual money, good money, and things started to change. But I was really driven by sticking to what I had committed to, number one. But sticking to what I'd committed to, because I sort of believed that this was going to be the tool that was going to change my family's life, for I guess forever, and put me in a position where I'd be able to provide food, have some stable cash flow to be able to do other things, and then I'll sort of deal with me later on.
Just for context, you were raised by a single mother in Tembisa, and it was you and your brother, and you'd fall into tough times, right, as most single mothers would in this country and worldwide in general. So it was important for you to try and play a role in providing for the family and sort of stand in the gap where your mother couldn't provide as well. And success to you at that time, from what you've just said now, was just being able to bring something home, so that we're not eating crumbs today, we have actual slices of bread. That was success. How has your definition of success then now changed from then to now?
Sure. Phew, my goodness. I mean, definitely, for one, it's definitely changed. I've been able to achieve quite a number of things. I think for me, success for me now is being a very present dad. I've got two sons. I love them very much. Being a very present dad. I think being able to I think success for me sort of looks like being able to build better long term annuity income, to take care of them much longer, once I'm not here on this earth any longer. But I think for me, it's just being at peace,
Mm.
and resting, because I'm definitely part of the individuals that instigated the what you're doing. If you're waking up at 5 a.m., you're wasting time. You should not be sleeping, you should be grinding, but that's not
Mm.
healthy. It's just that when you're caught up in that bubble in that moment, you feel like those 18-hour, 20-hour days, all you should be living on. But you're also pushed by the fact that you don't want the poverty that you come from.
Mm.
You sort of mentioned it, being raised by a single mother was very tough. All I literally wanted to do was just to be able to help out. Right. That's all. And it's been able to grow from there. And I think for me, it's great now to be able to say she's fully taken care of, because she really played a big part in taking care of me. And I think also being raised by a single mother, it just says to me, being a dad of two boys, be very present, be very intentional, and be very committed. And it's a lifelong journey.
Mm. And being able to say I'm going to follow this dream no matter what takes a lot of
Yeah.
audacity. I'm just imagining you in Tembisa in the township falling into hard times. You're in high school, you have to leave high school to go to like a some sort of tech school to
Yeah.
get some skills, and you still had to have the audacity to go to high school and say, I'm going to provide you with your cheek jackets. I'm going to turn my mother's garage into an internet cafe and it's going to work. And more than that, I'm going to spend 7 years making no money and still fight for this job. It is the audacity for me.
Yeah.
Like, the Yiddish will call it chutzpah, right? Like, you're gonna just go for it and have that extreme confidence in your idea. And I believe the extreme confidence in yourself, that if I'm going to bet on anything or anybody, I'm betting on myself, and I'm going to keep on improving every single day. What would you say influenced that mindset for you to say, listen, I'm audacious and I'm going to just go for it?
So for me, it's also what influenced that is what actually got me to start thinking about entrepreneurship. So I think one Friday, a gentleman by the name of Hector Mdao, who was a presenter, entrepreneur, I think then was Radio Bob and the Swords Kaya, something like that, who came to my church during youth service. And he was talking about how go out there, there's more to the world than Tembisa. In my head, I'm thinking, more to the world than Tembisa? The world is Tembisa. What is this guy talking about, right? Because you've sort of assimilated your dreams around, if I can get myself a 4-roomed house, I get myself a partner, we'll have one kid, we've got a car to move around, great. But that'll be our place to call home. And then I get myself a 325 IS BMW, I'm sorted. That's my life in a nutshell, right? But when he said that, I held on to those words for some reason. Then I found myself a couple of weeks later on, getting on a taxi. I'd go to your Wimpy. Then tea, Rooibos was around 3 rand. I'd get newspaper. I'd go sit there for a couple of hours. But the specific one I used to go to was the one in Pretoria, because when you'd get onto a taxi going to Pretoria, there was a Mercedes-Benz dealer. As you enter Pretoria, you can't enter Pretoria without passing that dealership. So I'd get off there, go to the dealer. I'd spend a couple of hours there, and I used to always tell this guy, "This is my car." That car at the time was a CLS, right? And I think those are some of the things that got me, that jocked me, that got me to a place where I got to expose myself to stuff. There's a wise gentleman who says, I think it was Dr. Marco from Regenesis, says we start businesses according to the level of our education. So I sort of take it a step further and say, according to the level of our education and level of our exposure, whether the exposure is read exposure, it's traveled exposure, it's you being able to hang out in the right circles where people are able to drive you into thinking. So it makes sense 17 years ago that when it started as an internet cafe, because that's what all I was exposed to. So it was an internet cafe, it was a hair salon, it was a car wash, it was a tuck shop, And I could only choose between these because that's all I was exposed to. But what he then spoke about then got me in a position where I pushed myself out there to then say, let me expose myself to more. Right. So that then was the amazing advice that got me to where I am. And he said, no, no, don't stay where you are. Watch the car next door. Get that 5 rand or 10 rand, get onto a taxi, go sit in town and see what
Mm.
rich or successful people are doing with their
Mm.
lives.
That's amazing. And once you've realized that, you need to sort of say, I'm going to stand in the gap.
Yeah.
And for example, poverty ends with me, the
Yeah.
lack of
Yeah.
education ends with me, be divorces in my
Yeah.
family, they end with me.
Yeah.
I'm standing in this gap,
Yeah.
and a new generation
Yeah.
and a new time from here forth is now going to be born, because now you've had that light bulb moment that's made you realize that there's more to the world than
Yeah.
just that. At what point did you realize, number one, what gap you had to stand on? And number two, say, okay, I'm planting my feet here. This is me. I'm standing in the gap. It ends here, and I'm starting anew.
It's constantly evolved over the years, right? I think when once we got into our 8th year, I sort of cemented myself into saying, in actual fact, what we're going to be and what we're going to do is that we're going to provide digital printing solutions. That's all we're going to do, right? And the moment I hung into that, things started to fall in line. I met an amazing gentleman. At the time, we are the same age. He was white. Philip, running a company in the town of Tembisa called Glenmarais. And he had all the equipment. And he said to me on that day, first day we met, I don't know you, but I like you. I'll teach you every single thing. You know, he taught me every single thing I needed to know about digital printing and the sort. I'd come there, sit with him for hours. He'd be like, no, no, I'll teach you. It's not a problem. And that's where I learned from a growth perspective, that's where I learned about digital printing. But it's within doing stuff that a bug bit in 2015. It was Township Entrepreneurship, because just before then, I'd gotten quite a number of platforms to come talk up, share my story, right? So that's all I was asked: come share. There's this conference, come share your story. There's this media platform, come share your story. But out of that came, it also then brought a lot of questions from my peers or individuals that lived in the same neighborhoods as me across the country to say, we heard you speaking about one, two, three. How can I get this? How can I get this? But the questions that they were asking to me seemed very like, no, man, you should know that. That's when I realized that no, no, but the access to information is a big challenge, right? And those are some of the things that are inhibiting either entrance into the market space or the ones who've being hindered to grow because they don't know certain things. So we really then started T out of a sheer passion. And I think we've now cemented ourselves, or rather, I've cemented myself completely and fully now to say that we're trying to solve for the township entrepreneurial problem. We're also then trying to solve for the brands that truly want to solve the township entrepreneurial problem, to be able to bridge a gap between the two and creating inclusive markets that are very impactful and very intentional.
Mhm. And when you talk about tea and what your mission is with that business or that organization, it becomes a little also bit tricky from experiencing it as an outsider, right?
Yeah,
Because it looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like it's not just an education platform, but you also have to change mindsets a
yeah,
lot. Because when we are who initially, well, our circumstances, if you are born in a certain environment with certain challenges, sometimes that's all you know. So you need that one push that says you can be out of this. These are the other options that you have in the world. Then you have to then be willing to change the mindset and take the information and the knowledge that's being brought to you to say, okay, great, so
mm,
these are the
mm,
options that I have. I can change and do that. So it starts there, it looks
yeah,
like, for me, in
yeah,
terms of let's change perspectives, let's change mindsets. Even in terms of work ethic, I like that your big hashtag and your big motto is get things done. A lot of people don't want to get things done.
yes,
They'll
yes,
tell you that there
yes,
is unemployment, they don't get
yes,
opportunities,
yes,
but even when given an opportunity, they'll not get things done because
mm,
people are
mm,
comfortable being chilled and
mm,
relaxed. And the moment you require somebody to show up more than they're used to, it's like a bother, I abuse, right? So it starts there with changing that mindset and say you have to get things done, and this is what it means to get things done,
Yeah.
and this is what it looks like getting things done before you even get to teaching on these are the opportunities, these are the sponsors,
Mm.
this is how you start a business, this is how you register. You change that mindset first. What kind of challenges have you faced in the township space trying to implement that knowledge?
I mean, I like the mindset one, right? Because it speaks right into what we've had to do over the years, right? And we noticed something years ago that any township we went to where we tried to do stuff in those townships, there was a mindset from the community that said, what are you guys gathering us for here? Is it cooperatives? Is it a tender? Is it whatever? And so we then realized that we knew very well that one of the ways in which to start imposing a new mindset is let's change the environment. So it was very intentional that when you come to the workshop, it looks nothing like what would ordinarily be perceived as township. So we wanted the person who lives just down the road, who's walking up to this place, this venue that they always walk into. They've attended weddings, their funerals, they've attended graduations and the sorts, that walk into the same space and it's a totally transformed space. For me, it was important to say that we'll create spaces in the township that can compete with any space set up in any venue, in any ICC or whatsoever the case is. Why? Because that then deals with the mindset. The moment the person is enters into a new space, it opens up their mind to new possibilities, right? They don't walk into a space and they assume themselves a certain position and it blocks them from accessing the information. That was the first. Number two, we then verbally and orally engage the individuals around what we live for and what we should be existing for is one, two, three. And to see some of those realities now come to life through the growth of so many entrepreneurs. I mean, we've been able to work with over 70,000 township entrepreneurs, over 20,000 global entrepreneurs that have participated in our programs. So for me, that's the seed because the moment you impacted one individual, they're gonna go and impact others. And it's to say to them, compete, but number one, have a competitive advantage, means solve a pain and solve a problem. Number two, have a competitive advantage because when you don't have a competitive advantage, you've got no economic right to be in the marketplace. You're going to get thrashed because the marketplace is unforgiving. But also for me, I love the fact that you touched on it. I wear this cap as a constant reminder to me to get things done. That if I drop the ball, if I slip up, I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be dominated in the market. We've seen it with global brands and multinationals. You slip up, you're out. But also, it's a reminder to me to say that be very intentional and be very present in the moment. Because for me, getting things done is about bringing your dreams into reality. So when I started to believe in it, 17 years ago, I didn't think I'd be sitting here in this room today with these amazing people talking about my journey, right? And then I was fighting for different things, but now still fighting for different things, but at a different level, at an exponential rate. And I think that's why it's important for people to live out their dreams because, when I was younger than I am now, I had a lot more energy. I'm grateful that I still have that energy, but as I grow older, I will no longer have that energy. So, one of the biggest motivators for me was always to say, the last thing I want is to be 40 years old or 45 years old and I'm still hustling. Because hustling is a phase that you need to work yourself out of and fight to work yourself out of, which is why then I used to say stuff like, if you're invited to an interview at 7, you show up at 6. If the deadline is Wednesday at 10 o'clock, you deliver on Tuesday or on the Monday. Why? Because you are fighting to change the narrative or you're fighting against, generational curses or whatever the case, which is why then I had told myself poverty has to stop with me and my family. And it has stopped with me. So now the next leg of it is to then now you've got a foundation to now build new ideologies and new narratives to move on to the next level and new generations.
And the township economy is actually booming and it shouldn't be underestimated. I read a stat when I was preparing for this interview, which is really fascinating. They said that it's a 900 billion rand market in the townships, and you'll find 60% of those businesses being formal and 40% being informal. It means that it's really a huge opportunity for many people. How do you go about building a business that thrives in the township and really be able to claim your share of that 900 billion rand?
So I think for me it's two parts, right? It's the one, so it's one, the entrepreneurs. The second part is the individuals that live within these communities. Now, I'll start with the individuals that live within these communities. It's the understanding that you are the power, firstly. Secondly, in knowing that you are the power, don't undermine that 5 rand or that 10 rand, because oftentimes we undermine the influence of the money we have in our hands. So I'll say to Ancillar, we love you, we love your products, but we have money, we'll support you. But you've got money now, you've got that 10 rand. So I think for me, what that then means is a symbol of being very deliberate with the knowledge that you have, being very deliberate with the knowledge that you have that says, whatever money I have, if there is an alternative in the township, I'm going to direct my money to that alternative. And number three, it's being proud of individuals that live in the township to say, we are proud in the sense that we want to build our own billionaires. We have seen it time and time again, year and year, we make billions for individuals. We've made so many individuals billionaires. So the mindset that says we don't want to see our own as billionaires. We don't want to see an Ancillar as a billionaire. That limited mindset of envy and scarcity is over. We are now looking towards creating our own billionaires, right? On the second part with the entrepreneur for me is to say, create the product, but don't just create that amazing product for the township that you are in. Build your business and start it where you are with what you have, but that business has got the innate ability to compete in other markets and even in global markets, right? At some point, I was talking about an entrepreneur that we worked with who was operating out of 4 meter by 3 zinc container, umkuku or a shack as you'd have it. In one of the township was making about 580,000 rand, a month, and a lot of people got shocked. But that's the least of these entrepreneurs. There's a guy who sells glass sheets who does way more than that. So I think for me, and you're right, the township economy is booming. But what we then need to do is to make it an inclusive economy. Because much of those amounts that you sort of mentioned now, they talk to the monies that are transacting, that are being pulled out by the multinationals. So when you build an inclusive economy, is to say that, in a space where you'd have retail spaces, in a community, in a township, you would have a SIPO, doing the grease clean-outs. You would have a Tabo being brought in to provide very strategic procurement opportunities. And I've always said to large corporates that let's look at your top 10 commodities that you're transacting with, or whatsoever 10 items that majority of your spend is going to. And could we then create filters or buffers where the top down and the bottom up approach, where the big guys that you've contracted work with 10 or 5 of the small guys in contracting them, and skills transfer to these amazing individuals, so that tomorrow when the same contract comes out, they can then equally bid for those larger contracts. So for me, then it's being intentional. And I think it's also then breaking away from saying that, the only thing you should be striving for as a township business is to be doing catering gigs, cleaning gigs, security gigs, construction gigs. No. Let's open up the market and let's open up the mindset to say that there are more strategic opportunities that you should be delving deeper into. Then let's research those markets.
Yeah, for sure. There's an interesting statistic, a very interesting statistic I want to read here. So a report that I read said there is about 532 townships in the country, and around 150 billion rand is spent in cash in those townships from about 150,000 Spaza shops every year. And then they say that they contribute as much as 5.2% in the GDP of the country. 5.2%.
Yeah.
That's massive.
Yeah.
5.2%. And they also employ 2.6 million people in the country. And when I read those numbers, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I need to start thinking about what to do in the space, because 532 townships, that's an entire market.
Yeah.
If that space can employ 2.6 million people, listen, that's a game changer right there. What kind of businesses are actually at this moment in 2023 booming within the township space, or where there is gaps where businesses can boom. If somebody is watching this and they're like, I want to do something, what should they be doing and what would do well?
So, I mean, I love those stats. I think those stats in and themselves are a bit conservative
Mm,
because the informal market, I mean, last checked, it was said that there's about 1.8 million. There's way more than that.
mm,
And you must also understand that when the matrix is utilized to then measure unemployment, if I'm an informal business, I'm still
mm.
considered
Unemployed.
unemployed.
Yeah.
And I think we then need to shift that because I've got quite a number of people that I employ in my informal business who might not be getting their UIF or their PAYE. So shifting the matrix would then start to then shine a light in what is now considered a very gloomy part of the country. So now when we then start to only focus on the gloomy parts of the country through these stats, we then block off the opportunities that are available to us. And the township economy is very big and very vast, right? But also, what we have then seen is we have then seen, and I'll talk about this, a booming middle class that has said we don't want to go out of the township. We want to enjoy livelihoods, great living spaces in the township, great food in the township, but we don't want to be served mediocrity. Serve us excellence. Serve us the same excellence that we'd get if I went to, I think, a Northcliffe boutique.
Mm,
Serve me the same excellence I would have gotten if I went to, because these individuals work in those spaces. They deliver though that level of excellence to patrons that come into the businesses that they work in. So they know what excellence sort of looks like. So anyone who wants to then participate in the space, number one, you must be intentional. Whatsoever products or services that you're looking to deliver and serve in this space, it must not be a by the way, but deliver dignified products that are excellent, that compete on global scale. And then you start to then see people then supporting sort of sorry then supporting your product. But also for me, what I've always said is, we often undermine where the money is. So I say to young guys that are looking for jobs or are looking for business opportunities, well, start, get 50 bucks, stock a couple of veggies, go to the corner and start telling them, Ish, yo, what are people gonna say? So it's an ego
mm,
thing. Then you don't want it that bad. Because if you really wanted it bad enough, you'd go to your neighbor's house where there's a girl who's the same age as you, who's a teenager who dresses like you, and you take the ego, you put it aside because, the poverty that you're faced with has got nothing to do with the person on the side. That's why we then see the gaps in the market that are being fulfilled by foreign nationals that we are now keep fighting with week in and week out, right? But we shouldn't be because they are taking advantage of the gaps that of the opportunities that we have considered as crumbs, right? So, and if the only time we'll react is when we see people having taken up things that we were working on, that our granddads and grandmothers made money out of, then it's too late for us. Because we're looking for the corner offices with a view in Santon and are discarding washing sneakers in the township, washing cars in the township, and also then taking that to the next level, then poverty is going to be our portion
mm,
because no one is going to give us opportunities on a silver platter. We then need to go out there and get it, but we've misunderstood what going out there and getting it means. It means, so for me, I've always said that if you've got a skill and you live in a community, what could you do that is within that community? It doesn't have to be the most creative that can bring money into your hands. Is it washing their bins? Is it cutting their grass? Is it buttering between the guy who's got the machines and you and getting those grasses cut and taking ego and putting it to the side?
mm,
Because if you don't do that, then then indlala, in my
mm,
language, indlala,
mm,
poverty is always going to be your portion.
mm.
And you then should not be then chastising people that are coming into your
Yeah.
market and taking advantage of your market if we are not closing up all of those gaps. Because if ego is still going to be the main thing, then we're not going to succeed in anything because money is not only in the glamorous spaces, but the township economy is shining a light and saying that the spaces that you deem dirty, stinking, undignified, that's where a lot of wealth is. Because you sort of see it with the large influx of all these brands saying that we now want to go into the township. So if you, being someone who comes from the township, are still undermining it, well,
You're going to lose out.
you're going to lose
So, if
out.
you were to pick 5 types of businesses that could thrive today in the township, what would they be?
I mean, there's quite a lot. I mean, I
Mm,
think any business that you can think of can thrive in the township.
mm,
There's a big boom in the well, in the retail space, and I guess the food retail
mm,
space, right? There's really a big boom that's also come from selling like your non-traditional foods, like or traditional food like your umhod or your intestines and the sort, right? That agro being able to plug into that part of the value chain is still a very big part of that market. I mean, there's a very big space popping up within the backroom space, but not just creating the 3 by 3, the 3 by 2 back rooms that have got no kitchenette, nothing, and everyone uses communal bathrooms and showers, but creating in suit type back rooms where people are able to have dignified living. And we've seen quite a number of those developments popping up in various communities and townships, right? So for me, the big thing has always been to say, create it, but create it dignified and create it well. It's gonna pop and it's gonna do extremely well. I mean, in the work that I do, I mean, I get to see 7,000 new businesses each and every year. And, these guys range all the way from manufacturing brake pads to manufacturing cleaning products to reselling products to manufacturing their own bricks and manufacturing. So there's a large number of individual manufacturing staff. And the one way to break away from the fragmentation, each and every township has it. And what I mean by that is, if you walked into any township and you looked for solutions, complete end-to-end solutions for whatever problem you have, you'll find them. So it's the fragmentation that says that this one who's manufacturing the bricks is not utilizing this one who's got the truck. This one who's got the truck he's got 7 trucks as a fleet, but he only services the Northcliffe area but lives in the Alexander area. But the people there that need his service. So there's still that mismatch of opportunities that has said, we are looking for the one to solve the problem, but the one who solves the problem is right next door to him. But I can't work with Jabu, man. I know Jabu. I've always worked with Jabu. So it's shifting that mindset so that we're able to build an inclusive economy wherever we go.
And that's a huge barrier to entry, right?
Yeah.
And to even the scalability of the businesses that we see pop up in the township because, oh, well, I changed your nappies. There's no way you can build such a product because I know you, and even just people expecting handouts because they know you, they raised you, they changed your nappies and expecting discounts, etc., that makes it difficult to even operate. But I feel like even when you're coming from outside the township, it even gets more difficult because who are you? And how do I trust you? How do I know for sure that whatever it is they're trying to do is for my benefit, or you're just coming for my resources and what's in it for me? And there's a lot of barriers in that space. How would you advise people who are outside of the township, like myself, who are looking into possibilities of going into the township space to start businesses, to navigate those kind of challenges?
No, so for me, it's number one. Everything starts with understanding, but have your hand firmly on whatever products that one wants to serve or services wants to deliver into that space. Be intentional. I think, which is why, with our workshop, there's at least 12 different intentional points we've been able to build up, right? Um, that and we utilize as a proof model to brands to say that you often talk about you can't give them procurement opportunities. We built a procurement opportunity model. We didn't just build a procurement opportunity model, we actually have been running this. And these are all the pitfalls, these are all the success. So you don't have any excuse any longer, right? And I think for me, it then becomes important to say, anyone wants to then operate within the space, be very intentional, be acclimatized to the culture, because no two townships are alike, right? There's a Tembisa, there's Ebony, which is separated by the street. There's Clayville, there's Langa, there's Kaelicha, there's Guamashu, there's Ntuzuma. And those townships which are next to each other are not alike because it's the culture, it's the dialect, it's the foods that are dominant within those spaces. So be very intentional about how and the who of all of those areas. And the moment you then start to then grow and understand those areas even more, it becomes more and more important that you then entrench yourself in the cultures and communities. And I'll give you an example. There's one gentleman we worked with uh, who wanted to build properties in the township, and he had successfully bought a couple of them. But the biggest challenges was crime, right? So he built these up. They wake up in the morning, the bricks are gone. They buy product, they buy raw materials. They wake up in the morning, the windows are gone. So for me, it was a simple problem. And all we told him was simply this: do you have neighbors around where the properties are? Yes. It's simple then. Who lives in those neighbors? In most cases, so on the left was a grandmother, I think an old lady who lived alone. On the other side, it was a grandmother and a granddad who lived with their kids. No, it's simple. Buy them groceries each and every month. Don't ask them to look out for you. Just buy them groceries each and every month. Tell them it's your goodwill. Because, you can't come and take and then expect the very same people to look out for you. One of the ways to entrench. So the moment he did that, theft stopped. In actual fact, most of the criminal activity was stopped by the people that were living there. Why? Because whatever you are building in the township is benefiting us. Now, the biggest fights that are happening right now in the country are stemming from, you guys are building these big facilities. Yes, we're giving you our money because we actually need your services, but you're giving us nothing back. It's the large corporations that take 30 million rand a year, they give it to cycling challenges and they give it to Pets R Us and animal foundations, but they will never take the very same amount of money and distribute it to black individuals in the townships. And that's a big challenge. And people can pick out on that. And the reality of it is, yes, I will keep giving you my money because I actually need your service. And the system that is built, the financial system that is built in such a way where I can't operate without you. But should the day come where I need to revolt, I'm going to revolt because we don't need you. You're not entrenched in us. There's nothing about you that says you're a part of us.
So how somebody would argue that then that creates or makes the idea of handouts stick, that if you want something, if you want to build something in my community, you better do something for me, of which that's not how we would want the world to operate, right? You want people to be able to go work for whatever it is that they need and be able to grow themselves in that way, like everybody else. So don't you think by doing that, we are sort of enabling that behavior to continue?
So I think for me, I understand the question and the thinking there, but I think also is to understand the socioeconomic um, layout of our country. With the unemployment, the townships prehistorically being set out as partial zones where the maiden workers would live far away from the urban areas, right? Now, now the thinking and the reality there with that is to say, now this part of the conversation then speaks to the larger organization and brands that have been taking money from these communities but doing nothing for those communities, right? And living them in ruins and filth. For me, it's not necessarily an entitlement mindset, but the frustration then comes where you've got individuals that have got competing services and products who could potentially participate in delivering those products. But you have a mall built in the township, the security company doesn't come from the township, but you've got over 50 security companies that are operating in the township that are rendering their services all over the country. Why can't they be given an opportunity to bid? So all we are saying is that being intentional is to say, guys, we've got a space that we're developing. We would like to shortlist and do an open call to shortlist from the local community and let the ones who are competitive participate. So we did that with one of the developments. It was a 70 million rand development, which was happening in one of the townships. And we made a fair procurement opportunity. Very fair procurement opportunities to qualifying and competitive bidding. No handout whatsoever. And the qualifying individuals participated in that market opportunity. Now you've got this very intentional project, which took a step further in saying that, you know what, the guys who are building here is actually the lady who lives down the road. But what we then did with that particular program is this. We then looked at the criteria to say, what could be what you don't cancel, because criteria is very, very important, right? Compliance is extremely important because it then helps with governance, health and safety and the sort. But what could you then potentially relax and give provisional approvals on certain things? So if you're in the construction space, could we then potentially, if this person meets the quality of individual that we're looking for, could we then tell them that you meet the criteria and we want to select you, but however, we will then give you a provisional approval on the basis that you'll then go and work on your letter of good standing with the labor department. Once you've got that, within 30, we give you 30 days. Once you have that, you've got the contract and you can move ahead. Why do I say that? Because the cost of compliance in our country is extremely expensive, which means that We then need to then incentivize these individuals who then need to then participate in opportunities. So for any average small business, whether in the township or anywhere, you're chasing a dead ratio each and every day. Sorry, each and every month, right? You're operating on a 14-day dead cycle. So it means that I don't attend any workshop. I don't participate in anything unless it does two things for me, unless it saves me money or makes me money. So we then see small businesses as being very despondent or hard headed, and they don't comply. They don't want to participate in opportunity. No, they want to participate in opportunities, but it's just him and his one employee, and he's very hands on
Mm.
in dealing with the technical aspects of the
Mm.
business. But if we don't understand that, you will consistently rule them out and factually rule them out on a clear base. But you see, you didn't take the time to understand what
Yeah.
is it that is keeping them from actually delivering the compliance that is
Yeah,
required.
I absolutely love that because it brings back to one of my most favorite ways of doing business, which is shared value. Everything I do has to do with shared value, be it with my employees or my teams, my contractors, my the people within the communities that we work with. There has to be shared value. I win, we win. It's a win-win type of situation. It's very, very important when we do business, and I think that in the township space, it also becomes very important, like you were mentioning, especially when you understand where we come from as a country and the difficulties that we've sort of experienced as a country. The reason why I'd posed that question is because during the pandemic, I found myself in such a between a hard rock and what do they say,
A rock and a
a
hard
rock and a
place.
hard
Yeah.
place, because we knew it was the pandemic and things were tough for so many people and wanted to do something good. Their own money, small businesses. Let's go into the townships and like do some puzzles. Went to shops and bought, food from oil to staples, oil, maize meal, and sugar, and all of beans and all of those kind of things because we knew things were tough. And we went down to Zanspruit, which is an informal settlement on Bears Nodia Drive. We were chased out of that place like we're dogs because the moment we arrived, it was like, number one, how did you choose who to give food and why? We're like, well, we're small businesses. We can only do 100. And we asked people within the community to identify 100 people that we can do this for. And that's it. We can literally only do that because we're not government or an NGO or anything like that. We're just people from the community trying to do something to our people. And I remember seeing hundreds of people now walk to us, people climbing on top of our cars, pissed. Why didn't you give me? You guys come here with your English and you think you own us. And I left that place feeling so deflated because it had started and come from such a good place. And this is the pandemic. We're all struggling. Even in my business, I had contracts being cancelled by clients. It was so tough that I went back into journalism. I was like, okay, BBC, let's do a show. Listen, I'm gonna take this opportunity just to supplement stuff. And I'll take even money from that job that I'm doing to be able to go and help within the communities. And that's the kind of reception that we received. I'm not saying this is what always happens, but it left me with a lot of questions in terms of how do I participate in this space and how do I participate effectively without making anybody angry or making it seem as if I'm better, because that was never the intention. Because I don't want to seem like somebody with money when everybody else is struggling. I'm just taking everything I have and saying, okay, let's share food so that you can have something to eat. So that's why I asked that question in particular, because even till today, I find myself in a tricky spot. I want to do stuff within the townships. I want to do trainings. There's so much I've learned around entrepreneurship. I want to do trainings. I want to do development. I want to help people become speakers or whatever it is that they want to do, because I know that there's so much talent within the space. But I'm scared because I'm like, oh my goodness, will this repeat itself? That's why I asked you that question in particular, because it's something that weighs on me, and I know that I have to do something, but it's the how do I do it and do it right and do it safely that becomes tricky.
I think first and foremost, thank you for doing that. Um, you know, I think for me, and thank you, but also thank you to all the corporates that are keeping the country running. Because if there's one thing we very clear on is the goodwill activities that are running in the country is actually what's keeping the country running. because government is failing, and they're unable also to reach out to where they need to go. But also there's a mindset challenge that has that continues to cripple the townships. I mean, you mentioned you went there and you were handing out food, and there were some who are now calling you out of your good deed as you think you're better. Who are you? Who are whatever? That's a scarcity mindset. But that's also been perpetuated by our governing party and other political parties. You ask yourself this: people need abolition facilities, but every election campaign, T-shirts and food packs are handed out. T-shirts and food packs. You look at the hierarchy of needs for our people, right? People need good sanitation. People need good places to live in. They need consistent jobs and the sort. But however, the ruling party knows. And also the biggest challenge that we've picked up is that in different communities that we've worked in, so I've had guns pointed at me, I've been violently assaulted for the work that we do, because you understand. But also the back end is we understand why. The why is the promises that were broken, that were left unanswered by the politicians. That's why we then suffer. For these people that are there, that who should be receiving this amazing gift and are not receiving this amazing gift purely because their dreams have been shattered by these individuals who then promised what they promised, but they didn't deliver. But also, there's the other end where you are then answering for someone else's sins. Someone else who then came in who said they would do this and they would do that. So the people themselves then remain untrusting, and they don't want to believe that you are actually who you say you are. And the criminal element as well that then have undertaken or taken some of our townships is these individuals who are there, and it's a bullying mindset and tactics to then say that anything you want to do in this particular township must happen through us. But it's not for the greater good of everyone else in that particular township. It's the greater good of a select few that want to then strangulate opportunities only for themselves. So we've said, in some of the projects, there are projects we've had to abandon. I do work in the township, but they're projects we have had to abandon that could have emancipated quite a large number of individuals. But you then reach a point and a ceiling where if government is not working with you on certain things and assisting, there's nothing you can do, unfortunately. And I've seen it. The corporates that want to do amazing good work, but we need the government, because the government at the end of the day is the custodian of every single work that needs to be done. So before we even do any work, they need to create an enabling environment for us to be able to create that work. I've often said to various ministers of small business year in and year out, we don't need you. We don't need your money. What we need you to do is we need you to actually govern, create an enabling environment, create the right type of policies, create the right type of support policies for small businesses, and watch them thrive. Because then the moment you're able to do that, big business is able to trust that if we partner with the Department of Small Business Development, the money is going to go to the right place. So now there's a big level of distrust with government. There's a big level of distrust with NPOs and NGOs that have operated in the space, because it's been self-serving. Now, when you walk into the space and want to do stuff, it's met with contempt.
And it makes sense, because if something has happened to you over and over and over again, you also build up a wall to protect yourself.
Yeah.
So I get it. I understand that. I mean, as a Black young woman in this country, I understand that, and I understand our anger and our fears and why we react in that way. Then the big question then becomes, from a small business perspective of young people like us who are trying to do something and want to take the little that we have into the townships, because there's so much talent in the township, so much talent, but the talent is at home sometimes with no jobs and no opportunities, because that's unfortunately the kind of economical landscape that we have now in the country. What do we do? How do we get in there and be able to do that, number one, safely? Because I felt unsafe. Like, imagine people being on top of your car. I remember just crying and thinking, we're trying to do something good. Like, how did this happen? How do we continue to do stuff that are good? Because even as that happened, but I still want to do good.
Yeah.
How do we continue to do good? And the way in which I said, in my opinion, I don't want to give out food parcels. I want to be able to share the knowledge that I have. This podcast is, for example, exactly about that. That's why it's called Access Genie. We're trying to give access to minds like yours, minds to people that other people otherwise not meet, so that they get knowledge and information to be able to propel themselves, right? So how do we get into the townships safely to be able to give whatever it is that we can to be able to decrease the unemployment rate that we have in the country, but also while protecting ourselves and
Yeah.
feeling safe? Because as a woman,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do if I get a gun pointed at me like you have. That's very scary. And then so many of us are sitting there wanting to do something, but we don't know how we do it while still being safe.
So I think for me, it goes back to, I mean, I grew up in Tembisa. And, I think also it's that, growing up in the township, because even in growing in those townships, there are different, I won't even say regional, different sectional issues
Mm.
and fights between different. So you now knew that, for us, if I want to come do stuff in Soweto, I need to know who's doing stuff in Soweto that's in line with the stuff that I'm doing, and I need to work with them to give it, number one, to then quail out, you know, who are you? Why are you here? Do you think this is Tembisa?
Mm.
This is not Tembisa. Because that's everywhere, that type of level of thinking. But what we found in the work that we do to sort of combat that is to find people that are doing work similar to the type of work that we're doing. It could be at a minor level, but the fact that they're doing, we go in there, work with them, and then collaborate in fulfilling what we're trying to fulfill, but also empowering them. Then you saw that then adds an element of localizing the
Mm.
support to a degree. And sometimes we then find that some of the people that we work with, don't deliver, don't show up, but you then it's the mindset. What you're dealing at that moment is the mindset, the matrix to say that, but we brought someone who's local, who's still here with us,
Mm.
who's then working with us. And it's sad that it needs to be that way, because help generally, is help. And when help comes from anywhere, any skin color, any race, any individuals, any country, it should be
Mm.
received.
Like you spoke about the man who helped you start and
Exactly.
trained
You
you,
understand what I'm
because
saying?
you could have
He didn't
shunned
know
that and
me.
you
He
wouldn't
didn't
be
know.
here
He's an
today.
Afrikaner
Yeah.
who, in a country that's marred by
Mm.
racism and the sort, he's an Afrikaner who didn't know me from a bar of soap,
Mm.
who said to me, "Come and we'll," and that built into its own friendship at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it goes back to the ones really that want to do stuff. My advice would be partner up with guys that are local, that are
Mm.
doing stuff, in saying, listen, what can we do? And also then sift out if they're being authentic or not. Because sometimes, some people will represent themselves as, we are the ones you must talk to do stuff in
Mm.
a certain community, but they're just trying to stifle those
Mm.
opportunities and
Yeah.
throttle them only for
Payola
themselves.
and all of that.
Yeah.
And as you're talking, I'm being reminded of how it's actually even similar in the white collar space, because other companies will try to crush you through competition. It's just on a different scale and a different
Mm,
level.
mm,
But even in, your Santon or whatever, which is suburbia, you'll find those kind of competition within businesses themselves. That's why you'll find even malls have strict rules about where can a Checkers be and a Pick and Pay be within a mall. And
mm,
because
mm,
those type of competitions exist anyway. So
mm.
that's why we've got the competition act as well, that really tries to protect those kind of things and in those kind of situations. So that really does make sense. So when we end this podcast, we like playing what is called Fast Five. It's five
Fast five.
questions
Okay.
that
Okay.
I get to ask you, and you answer in either one word or a sentence, whatever feels good. They move fast and they're fun. So we're gonna get into that right now. So first part, I want to know what describes your current state of mind in this moment,
This moment right now,
right now.
push,
Mm.
push. Um, I think this conversation has also then unlocked the fact that we need to do more, right? So my current state is push, right? And yeah,
Push, 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 and keep on pushing. And what's something that you used to value that you now no longer value?
cars. Um, I used to love cars. I owned a lot of cars, but my desire for cars has fallen through. I don't know, fallen through the cracks. I now appreciate different things. Traveling, I've got quite a good art collection. Sculptures. Those are the things I like. The things I used to like then, I don't like
Mm.
anymore.
And what have you had to unlearn?
Um, that I'm the answer to everything. I can solve everyone's problem. I need to be there to help everyone. Unfortunately, I've had to unlearn that because I can't. I can't be at 10 places at once. I can't solve everyone's problem. Um, that if I can do something in a moment that is done authentically and genuinely, that's all I could do, and that's all I can.
And that's it. And what beliefs or mindsets have been the most transformative for you?
I think for me, if we talk about belief, I can't talk about that without talking about, I think, my religious belief. I mean, I'm a Christian, and I really believe, in the word. I really believe that, if you set your mind on stuff and really pray and work on, because in my darkest moments, what has gotten me out of those dark moments was I pray. And then I work on whatever I need to work on, or go talk to someone who knows how to get me into out of those sticky situations, right? But I think for me, it's then also believing in that, but not letting go of my culture. And what I mean by that is I'm raising boys who go to multiracial schools, who speak English. They need to know what being a Xhosa is. They need to know what being a Gaba is. They need to understand, different African foods, what the African culture actually is, so that as they grow, they don't assume a new identity whilst letting go of their true identities.
And finally, what's the one thing after this conversation that you want to ensure you go to do and that will help grow yourself and your businesses?
I don't know if it's but I definitely want to go on my LinkedIn and write about people who are scared to actually do good. Because, I often talk a lot, and a lot is said about corporate should do, people should do, that I'm sitting here thinking, how about the many who've tried to do who are now despondent? Because the reality is also we're then faced with a very high number of, violent crimes that have now come up in the country. What about those people who have now become totally despondent in doing anything at all, either through trauma or whatsoever the case? And I think I'm grateful for the fact that you are here. You've experienced that level of trauma, but are still saying you still want to do something. But what about the masses who are saying, I don't want to see the township at all?
You had it for yourselves. Thank you so much for watching this conversation. And if you want to learn more about what's happening within the township economy, make sure that you follow Bulelani across social media platforms, from LinkedIn to, he's got a YouTube page as well. So please check him out. Until next time, keep winning and keep inspired. Goodbye. From the Cliffside Boutique Getaway, this podcast is for all entrepreneurs, leaders, and genies who are looking to learn from those who've walked the path to success. Thank you so much for your support, and stay tuned to more Access Genie. New episodes drop every Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course on YouTube. Follow us on social media and share this podcast with your friends and your family so they too can be empowered. I hope you're leaving with a newfound source of energy to go after that life that you want. Good luck.